So, and also because you're doing a crossover in the middle, you can do it around the corner. So you can do it in a corridor which has a corner, or around the kitchen table. But be careful what's around, so make sure that there are no sharp objects where you can hurt yourself on, or there's something that you can break if you fall down. So pay attention to that, please, if you try it at home. Hi fellow inline pilots, welcome to the channel and welcome to part 2 of the Beginner to Powerslide series. In this series I'm covering all the aspects of what I went through learning the Powerslide as a beginner. In the last episode I covered comparing the Powerslide to other braking methods and explained my reasoning for why I decided I would focus most of my learning skills as a beginner on learning the Powerslide before learning other advanced braking techniques or other skating skills. In this episode I will explain the most important and possibly the only skill you actually need to learn to be able to do a Powerslide. The skill I'm talking about is rolling backwards on one foot. So as long as you can roll backwards on one foot, then actually all you have to do to make a Powerslide is extend your leg, the free one, and drop a little bit down on the rolling leg, bend it to be low enough to get a slide, and then touch the ground with your other leg, and it will be sliding. Maybe you can also learn a Powerslide by just focusing on the forwards-backwards transition and do a very short backwards slide without being able to actually roll very well on one leg. But I want to do a Powerslide also at high speed, so that means that I would be sliding quite extensively, and then you need some way to keep your balance. So I thought, well, if I can keep my balance on one foot rolling backwards, I should definitely be able to keep my balance in the Powerslide. Although I was still having some doubt whether maybe if you slide, do you actually need to control the position of your sliding foot by changing the direction? Otherwise it might go sideways. I don't know. I didn't know. But I found out eventually when I started sliding that it just goes straight. As long as you keep it on a slide and not too much friction, then it will just go straight. And you just control the direction and the balance with your rolling foot. And it works kind of like a long boat. A boat has a rudder at the back, and it steers by changing the angle of the rudder. And it's the same with the Powerslide. You just change the angle of the rolling foot behind you to balance yourself, but also you can actually use it to go around a curve while sliding if you wanted to. So the way I learned rolling backwards on one foot was basically at home. I kind of started very slowly, very safely, pushing myself on one foot backwards, just pushing myself away from the wall and trying to see if I can make it to the other side of the living room. And I tried to wiggle my foot a little bit to get my leg to get a feeling for how to balance. It's kind of the same thing that I did for learning forward skating, where I learned to skate on one foot and do the same for backwards as well. Although, yeah, it's kind of the same thing. What I'm also doing now in this video is when I'm transitioning from forwards to backwards onto one foot. It's not really required. You can also transition onto 2 feet. But I wanted to also be able to transition from forwards directly into the Powerslide. So I also learned how to transition onto one foot, which is another thing that I'm not covering in this video. Another thing you learn when you do the rolling, you roll backwards on one foot if you can do it long, you'll notice that it's very tough on your leg. Your muscles are very much strained. So it's a good way also to train the muscles of your leg. And they need to be quite strong because when you're also doing power slide, most of your weight will be on the rolling leg. And you need to go quite low, down, bend through your knee, in order to be able to do a slide. Otherwise you'll be too far up, and your wheels will grab the road and you'll fall over. So you need to go very low. Actually much lower than you would think in the beginning. And therefore you need muscle strength. So while you're training your skills for rolling backwards, I was also training my leg muscles to become stronger. So it's kind of a 2-in-1 exercise. So yeah, that's kind of the only skill you need. If you can do a rolling backwards roll on one foot, yeah, you should be able to be ready for doing a power slide. When you're learning to roll backwards on one foot, it's also useful at the same time to also learn how to roll backwards on 2 feet in the scissors position, and also doing parallel turns and carving, as I showed earlier in this video. And also I found if you start doing this carving backwards and turning, then it also helps to do a forwards to backwards transition, like a flip, a jumping flip. Because if you land after the transition but you don't land exactly straight, you need to turn into the straight direction. And if you know how to turn, do very sharp turns, you can quickly regain yourself and get straight. So it makes it much more safe to jump into a backwards position, and gives a lot of confidence. So practicing those backward skating skills is definitely useful. And learning backward skating is actually not more difficult, I find, than learning to skate forwards. But the only thing is that your forwards learning skills are not helping you much, at least not for me, to skate backwards. It's like starting all over again, which is why I'm glad I started already quite early when I started learning forward skating, also to learn skate backwards. Because yeah, otherwise you would have to start over again basically from zero after you already can skate very well forwards, which is a bit discouraging. But just remember that it's a new skill. Don't expect that you can suddenly skate very well backwards, or there's something wrong with you if you cannot do it if you're already very good at skating forwards, because it's just a different skill. You have to just learn it from scratch. And then one downside of learning to skate backwards, therefore, is also that while you're skating backwards, you're not learning much forwards skating skills. So it's kind of like you're halving your progress of forward skating if half the time you're skating backwards. But anyway, it's all good. It's all useful, especially like the more directions in which you can skate, the better it is. If something happens and you lose your balance, maybe you're skating forwards, but you suddenly trip over something and you end up backwards. And if you can skate backwards, there's no problem. You just go backwards. But if you can't skate backwards, then as soon as you rotate more than 90 degrees, you don't know what to do, and you're quite easy to fall in that sense. So I think it's also helping forward skating confidence also to be able to skate backwards. And what happened to me in the beginning, especially when I was learning to skate backwards, was that when something unexpected happened, I tripped or I lost my balance or orientation, my immediate panic response was to turn back forwards, and that actually almost guaranteed that I would fall, because if you're already out of balance and you also try to turn the other direction, it's quite likely that you fall. And it took a long time of skating backwards before I started automatically in panic situation to take on the scissors position backwards, which is very stable, but you need to have this automatic response whenever something happens that you need to rescue yourself. And it took maybe a couple of months before I automatically did that. But now whenever something happens, I just go into the scissors position backwards, and usually I recover from the imbalance. So that's why even for if you just want to learn the power slides, it's good to also be able to skate backwards quite well. One more skill that's quite useful to do a power slide is, especially if you do a power slide at high speed, is to be able to keep looking forward forwards, which means that actually you look over your shoulder because your hips are going backwards. They're facing backwards. So you have to learn to look over your shoulder while going backwards. And it's kind of a new skill, so I'm still learning it, but my favorite way of learning it is doing a slalom. But the thing is that when you're going backwards, you start with kind of facing your face also backwards, because that's the kind of one of the most important sources of your balance, like your eyes, your visual, and the sensors behind your ears. When you start rotating them away from your moving direction, then you kind of lose a part of your senses that you need for keeping yourself in balance. But when you start learning to balance yourself with your legs and your feet, they learn to balance themselves. So after a while, it becomes possible to become more free in where you move your head. But for me, it took a long time, and especially like when I looked at one direction and then I changed sides and I looked in the other direction, which is not really recommended to do very often, but I would totally lose my sense of where I am, where I'm going, and I had to recover like my orientation again after that. So yeah, it for me was quite a challenge. So I just wanted to say that it's kind of like a separate skill. So yeah, strictly you don't need it, because you can also do a power slide not looking where you're going. But you probably will need it anyway, so it's good to start doing this as early as possible. My favorite way to learn it is doing the slalom, but be careful, because when you start looking at the cones, you trying to start moving around them, your attention spreads between keeping your balance and navigating, and therefore you have less attention to your balance, and you probably have a lot of encounters with the ground. So keep that in mind. Don't try to push it too fast. It takes time to learn to do all these things together. In order to become better at learning to skate backwards, I found an exercise that I did actually at home. It's a combination of moves. It starts out with a mohawk transition from forwards to backwards, then a crossover backwards, and then ending with a perpendicular stop, where you place your foot perpendicular and you stop your movement, and then you spring kind of back into the other direction. And it's not like for learning all these separate skills in this exercise, you have to learn them before already, but it's for consolidating them and building that muscle memory that makes them become more natural. And what I like about this exercise is that it can be done in quite a small area, and even then this crossover, the backwards crossover, you can really feel the acceleration if you do it correctly, even in that small space. And I really like the feeling when it works, because it feels like the ground is pushing me instead of me pushing myself against the ground. It's kind of really weird feeling. And also the perpendicular stop, it's kind of the same pose that you do when doing a power slide. So you kind of practice a power slide as well as a forwards to backwards transition and a crossover. But it's also, when you do it one after the other, keep on going in repetitions, it's kind of a very nice, calming, kind of a meditative exercise. So, and also because you're doing a crossover in the middle, you can do it around the corner. So you can do it in a corridor which has a corner, or around the kitchen table. But be careful what's around, so make sure that there are no sharp objects where you can hurt yourself on, or there's something that you can break if you fall down. So pay attention to that, please, if you try it at home. And with that, we have come to the end of the episode number 2 of the Beginner to Powerslide series. So this should be all you need to learn in order to start doing power slides already. I hope you learned something from this episode, or at least found it entertaining. If you have, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up. That would really help other people to see the video. And I hope to see you in the next episode. Bye!